And for me, I think art, music, at the end of the day, it's an empathetic art form, music. Um, I feel like the main purpose or the main goal is for you to share a human experience with somebody else. And whether if that is through classical or another form of music, if the recipient, the listener, when they listen to that music and they resonate with the empathetic nature of what that artist was trying to communicate, what kind of human experience they were trying to communicate. And if they resonate to that and are moved emotionally, then that's great. Like you've accomplished, what we're here to do.
Hi, Ken.
Hello, how's it going?
I'm fine, and you?
Doing well. Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you on Zoom. Tell me exactly where are you based?
New York City.
New York.
So it's like 10 a.m. over here, yeah.
So you really have something very interesting going on that I see. You're a musician and you play the cello, but in a quite different way than than most people would think.
I suppose so. Some may say that, yes.
Yeah. So what was the idea, or is it just something that we don't see often that it's done, or is it something that you started doing?
It's unusual to see. I mean, there are people who have done it before, and I've seen like so select few kind of do it occasionally, but I guess I'm one of the few ones that decided to kind of like really lean into it and really kind of make that, I suppose, part of my identity.
Yeah.
Playing it like a guitar, I guess.
Yeah. But tell me first, so when did you start playing the cello?
I started when I was 8 years old. So that was about like first, second grade for me.
And what was it about the cello that fascinated you or that made you choose the instrument?
It wasn't so much that I was attached to the cello itself. Both of my parents are musicians. My mother plays the piano, and my father, he's an amateur, but he plays the flute. So growing up, they would always play together, play a lot of chamber music or bring friends and, have an ensemble. So growing up, I saw that and I was just jealous. I just wanted to join, because it seemed to be such a fun activity for them. So I asked, what can I do to join? And they initially, were giving me little things like, they would just give me like a little drum for me to like hit, or my dad would give me like a broken piccolo so I can stand next to him and pretend that I was playing with him.
Okay.
But eventually, I was like, I want a real thing. So they figured that, in the family, we were missing a lower register instrument. So my dad, being a woodwind player, he wanted me to perhaps study the bassoon. And we started looking for a bassoon or a bassoon teacher. But I guess it turns out that bassoons don't really come in like a small kid size. And we couldn't really like find a bassoon teacher in the city that we were in. So the second option was just a cello, simply because there was a new cello teacher that came into town, and one of our family friends, was telling us about the new teacher and being like, I hear she's a good teacher, it's a cello, it's a low register instrument, maybe that would also work as well, So that's kind of how it started. It wasn't so much that I was attached or my family was attached to the cello. It just fit the requirement of a low register instrument.
And it just happened to be the teacher that was there in the town.
Yeah, it just so happened that the teacher that came was a cellist. So I could have
Well,
very much been any other low register instrument player, you know.
well, there are no coincidences, so maybe it was just meant to be that way.
We'll see, I guess. Well, I'll continue to try to find out, you know.
But now you're saying the town that you lived, where did you grow up?
I was born in Ohio, and I grew up in Ohio for a good chunk of my life. And then I moved to Michigan for most of my high school years. And then I came to New York for school. Then I've been kind of here since.
Okay. But when you grew up and in school, were there many opportunities for you to also then, or was it sort of music orientated that you could be stimulated more in a way, or was it just your family that where you got this inspiration from?
Initially, it was the family, but the schools that I attended had orchestra programs or string programs. So I would do a little bit of that, but by the time that I was in those, I guess, orchestra programs at school, I was already more advanced than most of the kids because I had been starting since I was much younger. And
Okay.
usually those programs that I started to join, I think, was from like middle school or something, or late elementary when kids start learning for the first time, later. So for me, I was attending a lot of like outside of school ensembles, and curriculums and programs. So there was like a chamber music program that I joined that was in town called Chamber Music Connection, where it's a program of, a very diverse range of levels and ages. And we all learn how to play chamber music. And I was also in like a youth orchestra in town. So I was doing a lot of different kind of musical, I guess, opportunities and ensembles in the town that wasn't necessarily through the public school.
Okay. Yeah.
Offering. Yeah.
But now, did you ever in that time and when you were young have this period where you sort of, like in teenage years where you were not as motivated, or was this something that really was your thing that you wanted to do?
It's kind of like both, like obviously as a teenager or it's growing up, sometimes your priority is friends.
Yeah.
It's the social life that you feel like you are defined by the people that you spend time with, and you want to just hang out with them all the time. You feel like, if you don't spend time with them, then they'll not like you, or they might not be your friend. So I think there was like a good chunk of time where I didn't want to practice, because for any kid, practicing is hard. It's also, it takes a lot of self-discipline and patience, and it's a tough thing. So it's much more attractive to go outside and hang out with friends and play video games or play sports. So definitely I crave that. But at the same time, fortunately, a lot of my really kind of like close friends that I made in life were also through the music programs that I was part of. So my friends, a lot of them were musicians. So they understood like the lifestyle. So it wasn't, fortunately through that, I also understood that, okay, like, this practicing is something that I have to do, but it's also motivating because I would see like older kids be really amazing. I would be like, I want to be like that, or I want to try to catch up to that, or get good so I can like impress my friends, or kind of like things like that. So it was kind of both, there were a pocket of my life where there were people that helped and supported the environment in which I needed to kind of develop as a person, but also being in a public school, I think system, music wasn't the focus for most students.
Yeah.
So they wanted to do all the other fun social things. And I
Yeah,
wanted
the
to
normal
like
things.
be part of that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think that's also good because it brings that balance, you know,
Yeah.
that you could have. But so you did your classical training and so on. And when did this switch come? Or when did this idea come to play it as a guitar?
You know, like funnily enough, it started very early, already in I think elementary, middle school.
Really?
Not too long after I started playing cello, because again, as a kid, I I really admired guitarists or like electric bass or just like bass players. I thought they were really cool. I wanted to be one of them. I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. Um, but also that in my mind was like a definition of like cool, like somebody
Yeah.
who can like play the guitar really well, and I thought that was like really cool. But the cello seemed like a kind of like a nerdy, thing to do. It like didn't seem as cool growing up as a kid. So, part of it was that I just wanted to be cool, or I just wanted to stand out or get attention and attract that kind of energy from around me. So that was part of it when I was a kid. Um, and then combined with me just trying to be a guitarist and wanting to do that, but I just didn't have a guitar, and my parents at the time didn't really buy me a guitar because they're like, you should focus on cello for now, kind of thing. So I just took the ideas of guitarists and just applied it to the cello just for fun. So I mean, it was just a very casual thing for most of my life, where I'm just kind of strumming for fun, and my friends would think that it was funny, and but it was not until college, like once I was in college or grad school, then I I found myself in a place at a music festival called the Caroga Lake Music Festival, which is in upstate New York. And I was thrown into a situation where I was placed with some jazz musicians, and they wanted to just kind of play a song, and they didn't have a guitarist. So they're like, hey, Ken, I know you play the cello like a guitar. Can you just like comp, which is like accompany us with like chords, and I had no idea how to do that, because like me just playing the guitar and like the guitar style and just strumming is one thing, but for me to actually like read the chord chart or like the lead sheet, because I didn't know how to do that yet, because this was just like a look. It wasn't really like an understanding.
Oh, okay.
Because it was, I just wanted the attention and kind of like the look and like seem like I knew what I was doing, but I didn't really know. So, so then being placed in that situation, that was when I first had to actually learn, like, how do I read like a jazz chart, or like when there's like a certain kind of chord that's written, how do I play that chord on the cello? So it kind of started from there, and I had to really kind of sit and figure out, okay, like if it says this chord, then I need these notes. My finger pattern needs to look like this, kind of thing. So I had to like develop my own method, because there's no, I guess, references like that I can rely on. Like there's no like teachers that I can go to, or there isn't really like an online resource or YouTube tutorial, because nobody was doing it. So I had to kind of just figure it out on my own and figure out what I needed to do to play these chords and how to read this to translate to the cello. So that's where I first finally started to dive in and have a deeper understanding of how to play the cello, much more like a guitar or a bass, and be able to accompany or have these things that I now do more of. And that's kind of how it started. So like the seriousness came much more later, I think, in life. And since then, I'm still learning and still trying to see. And like if I'm confused, I would ask jazz musicians and be like, hey, like, how do you do this, kind of thing.
Amazing. But I mean, so the notes that you play, because this is also what I thought, the chords must be completely different. So you have to have the background of being able to play classically to understand the cello, to be able to convert then to make it then sound or to get these sounds of the chords.
Yeah. So I guess from the core, it's universal. Like in jazz, the notes in the chord are the same for everybody, right? The way in which you like arrange it might be different. The way that you place, like the order of the notes might be different, or the notes that you add on top of what's written might be different. But at its core, like if you say like like an A minor seventh chord, that's four notes in there that is universal across the board. And the way in which I would, comp would be, stylistically a common thing across the board as well. There are certain kind of like styles in which people would accompany and like play. So that's kind of hearing that sound world and like learning the style. It's a lot of just kind of, again, learning like a language. That's a common metaphor that's often used in music and across different genres. So you kind of familiarize yourself with that language, how it sounds, how it's kind of spoken, and how it flows. So it was just something that I had to kind of dive in. But fortunately, I did also grow up listening to a lot of like pop music, jazz music, and all sorts of genres growing up. So at least I was relatively familiar with kind of how it sounded. So I was able to kind of instinctually work my way through, or, my friends would kind of guide me as well throughout. So,
but I mean, the cello is also not built really to hold that way. So is it also a bit uncomfortable then to do it? Or do you find a position where it's easy for you to hold?
Yeah, it is a little odd. It also looks a little silly, but it's actually not as uncomfortable as it looks, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, because the way in which the cello is shaped, there's these ribs. It's called a C-bow. It's on the side where it caves in, and you can put that like right over your leg. So you already have this like nice little pocket. To fit over your legs. That kind of like already works out. And on the top side of the bow, you can just kind of rest your arm on top of there. So it does end up kind of feeling relatively comfortable once you get used to it. As long as you always want to make sure that whenever you're playing any instrument, for the matter, that you don't feel strained, that you're not overexerting and overworking, because you don't want to injure yourself. So I try to just find a position that was comfortable.
Do you use the same instrument that you play classically to play like that?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing.
And the strings, the strings take it when you strum.
So far, they've been taking it.
Oh, really?
It's the strings are fine. My fingers weren't usually.
Oh, okay.
I used to get a lot of blisters on my fingers from all the plucking, or every time I was strumming, would have like these huge blisters from doing it. So like I've learned my lesson, and I started, if I'm strumming a lot, then I started using like a pick. So I don't like hurt my fingers anymore. But yeah, there was a period of time where I was strumming exclusively with just my fingers, and I would get a lot of blisters. So yeah, now I have like it's a special kind of pick. It's for like bluegrass, and it's like a much thicker.
Oh, okay.
It like works better for a cello that has really thick strings.
Okay.
But fortunately, I haven't broken the string yet. So
okay.
Hopefully we can keep it that way, knock on wood. Yeah.
But so you're also part of a band.
Correct.
And tell me about this band.
I have a band called Empire Wild. It's a trio with me as one of the cellists, and I have another cellist And then we have like a multi-instrumentalist as our third. And we all met, I guess, through Juilliard, where we all went to school. But we were only acquaintances. We weren't really friends during school. But after we graduated, we found an opportunity to get together to play non-classical music. Okay. Essentially, like I heard from other friends that there were these musicians that were good at playing non-classical music. Mm-hmm. And I have a YouTube channel that's separate from the band called JHM Jams, where we do weekly pop covers, where I just kind of like gather, different musician friends in my circle, and we kind of get together and just kind of play a pop song by ear and kind of have a good time arranging it. Yeah, so it's just kind of like a fun little project that I do. But so I was just looking for musicians that I could play with, who like classical musicians who could learn things by ear and play pop songs and like be able to play different genres. So those two were recommended to me. So I invited them over and we started playing together, and we like worked really, really well together. It had a very kind of natural workflow, and we sounded pretty good as a group. So after doing it a while, one of the other cellists suggested, what do you think about, starting to write our own songs, instead, and just like create like maybe a band and see what comes out of it. And that's kind of how it started. So we are a band that really spans across all sorts of genres. You could call it genre fluid. So we do classical, we do pop, jazz, folk music, any kind of genre any kind of music that really kind of resonates with us, we kind of dive into. So our shows are usually quite like a offering of everything, really.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Is it sort of, how can I say? So if you play all these different genres and you don't just stick to because of course you were classically trained, is there a sort of a snobbishness about that, like classical musicians doing just classical work and not going into other genres?
I think there was a time, probably not too long ago, even like 10 years ago, where probably the initial reaction for most people were like, oh, if you're diverging and going to something else, either that you're not a good enough classical musician to be able to make a living as a classical musician, or that you were just kind of not serious, or there was that kind of weird stigma and like stereotype of someone who does crossover isn't as respectable or isn't as cool, I guess. That there was definitely a little bit of that, I think, growing up. But fortunately, we live in a time now where there's the internet, where you can really see so many different kind of musicians from around the world. And this sense of versatility starts to become an asset. It becomes an advantage and a power to be able to be good at multiple different things, for you to be able to kind of put yourself in any situation and still be able to excel. So now I feel like it's not as frowned upon, and even for us, we did like a competition as a trio under Concert Artists Guild. It's a management in New York, based in New York, and they have this annual competition where if you win, then you get management. But primarily they are kind of like a classical institution, but they are like a slightly more like open-minded classical institution. And we applied, and fortunately we won, which got us like a North American representation. So now we have a manager who works with us, but that was a sign for us that, you know, we're this weird group where we're classical musicians, but we're not playing classical music at all. Yeah. And for like a classical institution to recognize that, yeah, to kind of like take us in was a comforting sign for us, that they felt like not just the industry, but also the audiences would be open and excited to have that kind of thing at their concerts. And even, you know, prior to us, there were many groups that showed a great example of that as well, that have paved the road for us. So I think now it's a very exciting time for a musician to be able to explore other genres, and for that to be an asset and something that is deemed as like a skill or something that's great or cool, you know?
Yeah. I spoke to a conductor a while ago, and he actually said that many of the music that we see as popular music, that the music itself is very interesting, and it's you know, we think of it as not as good because it's not classical, but it is actually very good music, you know. And that's also interesting for me, that if you go into these different genres, that you also attract different people to the music, you know, to the sound of the music and the sound of the instruments.
Yeah, I definitely think it's true. The more that I learn and explore all the other genres, it's really kind of amazing what kind of stuff is out there. And it's like really complex, sophisticated things that might be in like a, you know, like a mainstream pop song, or, you know, even some kind of other artist that's putting their stuff out there that is most definitely not classical, but it really still resonates, or you really admire kind of like the artistry that's involved in creating the work. And for me, I think art, music, at the end of the day, it's an empathetic art form, music. I feel like the main purpose or the main goal is for you to share a human experience with somebody else. And whether if that is through classical or another form of music, if the recipient, the listener, when they listen to that music and they resonate with the empathetic nature of what that artist was trying to communicate, what kind of human experience they were trying to communicate, and if they resonate to that and are moved emotionally, then that's great. Like you've accomplished, you know, what we're here to do. And that's why I'm not so kind of attached to like one particular thing, because if it moves you, then that's great. I think music, at the end of the day, you know, it makes you feel less lonely in the world, because we all experience all the human experiences and the emotions, and sometimes we feel like we're the only ones experiencing it, you know, whether when like really tragic things happen, heartbreaks, or even, you know, some of the most happiest moments. You know, I think in life too, like we have a really wide spectrum of life experiences and emotions that we go through. But by listening to, I think, music that capture all the different kind of moments of life and the spectrum of emotion that one might go through, I think it builds a community, because it makes you realize that you're not alone in this world, and then that there is a community of people who have experienced this before you and will continue to experience this after you. So that's kind of how I view it. So that's why I'm not so attached to a particular genre, because they all serve, I think, a greater purpose.
Yeah. And of course, when you play these different genres, you also have an opportunity to express yourself in a way.
Yeah,
As a
most
musician.
definitely.
Mm.
I agree. Because I think if I find a way to affect somebody, that's listening to our music or when they come to our show in one way, shape, or form, then, that's great. I guess the worst thing is like if they come and they leave without feeling anything, then, we didn't do our job very well. But yeah, it is a thing that I do kind of keep in mind,
Yeah.
that we're trying to create this empathetic world.
Now, if you come together and you as a group, you are also now composing, what type of music do you compose? What is the genre then?
For us, when we're composing and creating our own songs, again, it's a lot of different genres. We do pop, we write pop songs. We also have written like folk songs, some jazz, like American songbook type songs as well. So yeah, when we write too, it's just also kind of slightly scattered. But if it's kind of music that we resonate with and we like, then we do it. So we don't really think, oh, let's not do this because it's this style, or let's not do this because it's this genre. We're very kind of as inclusive as we can try to be.
Now, in a city like New York, where there are so many musicians and so many artists, and how difficult is it for you to make your name and to establish your place in the industry?
It's tricky, most definitely. Whether if it's New York City or not, I think it's hard, especially in New York City because it's so saturated with amazing artists. But I think it helped that I went to school here for 6 years. So while I was in school, I built a lot of relationships and friends that are now, I think, part of kind of the network in which I work with, in the world in New York. So I think that definitely helped to go to school, because now like my classmates or the people that I met in school are, doing great things out there, or climbing that like ladder. And, we invite each other for different kind of events or hire each other for gigs. So that helps. But for me, on top of that, I think really diving into social media helped kind of create a presence.
Yeah.
And really kind of establishing kind of an identity and a brand for myself by just kind of spending a lot of time investing in cultivating, I think, an audience on social media, whether if it's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or like YouTube. And that's kind of how I found myself here now. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you think of it, I'm on the other side of the world of you, and I discovered you on Instagram. So whatever you did, yeah. And
I
if
guess
I
it's
could,
working.
if I could discover you, then how many other people have? So yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's amazing, the power of
Yeah.
social media and the kind of connections that you make through just having a presence there.
Yeah.
So it is a very cool thing that I still get to experience, really meeting people from literally all over the world.
But now, Ken, tell me, what are your wishes for the future?
I think from kind of a selfish perspective, I want to just be able to keep creating music and keep playing with my friends or other great musicians and be in that space where I'm performing and I'm creating and I'm sharing. I think that is what I would like to kind of like be able to do for many, many years to come. And, if that means that, we become bigger and we're performing at bigger places or things like that, then that's great. But I think bottom line is like, if I'm happy playing the music that I'm playing or creating the music that I'm playing, and I feel like challenged and fulfilled and feel like I'm constantly kind of developing something, then I think that'll be really exciting. And then if I have that opportunity to share with others, whether if it's my experiences or teaching, other people music or cello, and being able to kind of encapsulate my life experiences and be able to kind of like share that, whether if it's in performance or not, then I think that's kind of the bottom line, what I would find myself happiest in. So that's kind of how I'm kind of seeing it from like a more personal perspective. And then if that starts to affect more people, and if it's creating like a positive community and an atmosphere and environment, or if certain people are inspired and motivated by kind of like the life that I'm trying to lead, then that's great, I think.
Well, and I hope somewhere one of your wishes would be to come to Vienna to do a concert, because I would love to see you play cello like a guitar.
Yeah, that would be fun. I mean, that I only visited once when I was a little kid, and I don't remember, because I was so little. There's like pictures to prove that I was there, apparently.
Oh, okay.
But there's nothing in here from that trip. So hopefully I can go and just remember.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But now I have one last question for you. Can you do a shout out for your favorite coffee shop or restaurant in your area?
Coffee shop or restaurant? I don't really drink coffee, so I don't know if I have a coffee shop. I know it's weird for some people, but I don't drink. I don't start my day with coffee. It's like I only drink coffee. I mean, I enjoy drinking coffee, but I only really drink in the afternoon if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm really tired from teaching and I need to like still keep teaching more students, then I might have some coffee. But restaurants around here, recently I went to an Ethiopian restaurant, like in my neighborhood, Benyam, Benyam, like right, like kind of like north area of New York, Manhattan. And it was incredible. I really loved it. It was delicious. And so that was a very memorable kind of meal that happened very recently. So, I guess shout out to Benyam, like this Ethiopian restaurant in New York. Highly recommend.
Okay. And what type of dishes do they have?
All sorts. They have, Ethiopian dishes that are vegetable based, meat.
Okay. Is it spicy food, or is it not necessarily?
At least the things that I tried weren't spicy. It's also kind of fun because you're eating like with your hands, where they give you, I don't know if you've ever had Ethiopian food.
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So it's how it looks is that they have their like very, I guess, this Ethiopian bread. It's almost kind of like this spongy bread that's kind of like thin and rolled up. And what you do is that they bring like this big plate with just kind of like little kind of like, I guess, these little dishes that's like on a plate. And then you take the sponge bread and then you kind of like tear a little bit. And then you use that to kind of like grab the food.
Oh, I see.
And then you like kind of like eat it, so it's kind of a cool, fun experience too, as an eating experience.
Amazing. Yeah.
So delicious and also kind of like a fun eating experience. So
Okay.
If people haven't tried it yet, I think it might be a fun
Yeah, that sounds
thing to
interesting.
explore.
But I'm just now very inquisitive because I want to know, if you don't drink coffee when you wake up, what do you drink when you wake up?
Just water.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I
There's
don't like.
not an interesting tea or something.
Yeah, no, like tea. I enjoy tea too, but I usually don't find myself drinking tea throughout the day either.
Oh, I
For some
see.
reason,
Okay.
I guess maybe I'm just lazy. Like the effort to make tea, to boil the water, and like already takes too much time. So I think for me, it's just usually water. Like the first thing I do,
Okay.
is just like drink water, and I just kind of go. Because for me, I don't really have such a hard time getting up, or just, I guess, being awake in the morning.
Yeah.
If I'm up and once I get ready, I'm pretty awake. So I don't really need coffee or tea to
I see. Okay. Yeah.
boost my morning. I usually need it more in the afternoon, like after, usually after lunch, you're full and you're sleepy.
Oh,
and
yeah.
warm. Those are usually the times when, I might drink something to kind of snap out of it if I need to do a lot of work or stay focused and I have things that I need to do. So that's kind of been my life.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So, but Ken, thank you so much for your time. It was so lovely to talk to you. And I hope when you come to Vienna, then you let me know so that I can come to your concert.
I hope so. I hope soon.